Now, another lawmaker attending the security conference there in Germany is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. The retired Navy pilot just won a preliminary injunction against Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who had attempted to punish him for participating in a video telling service members they can and must refuse illegal orders. While the ruling represented a win for Kelly, he tells our friend, MS Now's David Rode, that there is no reason to celebrate.
This is not good news. Just by trying to do that, they're trying to reset the relationship between the Senate and the executive branch in a way that's not good for our democracy. I mean, they tried to send the two of us to prison for something we said, for repeating the law. You just think for a second how crazy this is, that they were willing to go to that step because they didn't like what I said. Initially, said I should be hanged, executed, then prosecuted. So, of course, even from our allies here, we hear about this because this is like, this is like one of those forks in the road that countries sometimes take where they start throwing legislators in prison because of disagreements.
Senator Kelly there in Munich said he would make that same video again. And Peter Baker, he's not wrong in terms of how this is, for many, a source of great alarm, that this administration, the executive branch, would try to arrest and imprison, potentially, members of the legislative branch. And though they were dealt a setback this week, to be sure, as the senator says, and there's been reporting to back this up, the Trump Department of Justice, the other branches of this administration, are not abandoning their quest for retribution.
Yeah, no, I think you're right to point out that even though the grand jury rejected it, what really is important is the fact that they tried, right? That the President of the United States essentially tried to imprison 6 members of Congress because he didn't like their speech. He didn't like what they had to say. That's just a huge line after a year of lines being crossed. That's a huge one to have crossed. And it's just remarkable. Republicans were upset to learn that Jack Smith's office during the Biden administration had looked at their phone tolling records, didn't listen to the phone calls, just looked at the records of who they called, said that was an incredible intrusion on congressional autonomy and an abuse of law enforcement power. Well, here you have an administration literally trying to convict members of Congress who say something the president doesn't like. And I think that we haven't really focused on the consequences of that enough because it sets a real, different precedent here in history. My wife, Susan Glasser, the New Yorker, went back and looked. She couldn't find an example of a member of Congress convicted of a situation like this going back until the 1790s. We don't do this. We don't convict members of Congress for things that they say, even if we don't like what they say, even if we think what they say is wrong or in some ways inappropriate. And in this case, they're simply stating the laws of the military code, the military code, which is that members of the military are, in fact, obliged to disobey illegal orders.